This mini PC is just slightly larger than 3 hard drives. In fact, it has 2 hard drives plus a tray with all of the other components you need, like SSDs, the CPU, memory, and more. What's more, you have 2.5 and 5 gigabit Ethernet plus Wi-Fi and all kinds of other features. Guys, let's face it, we've been doing these mini PC reviews and NAS reviews for a long time. I want to do something a little different today. So my thought was, why don't we go and just give the keys to the kingdom to OpenClaw, and we're gonna go let OpenClaw go and configure this as a home lab node. We got a lot to get to today, so let's get to it. Hey guys, this is Patrick from STH, and this is the Beelink ME Pro NAS. Now, the cost of this system with the Intel N95 processor that we have, we'll get into some options here also later, but then also with the 12 gigabytes of memory, it's somewhere in that $300, a little over $300 up to like maybe $400 range, but by the time you see this video, who the heck knows these days with memory prices? And frankly, it's a pretty nice system. In fact, it's pretty attractive. It has a lot going on inside of it, but it's definitely not the most fully featured NAS that we've ever reviewed. In fact, not even that we reviewed in the last like month or so, but I thought like, why don't we go take a look at it, show you the hardware, and then let's go do something exciting with it. And so my thought was, well, what if I went and we installed Proxmox VE and then we just turned the keys of the kingdom over to OpenClaw? Well, let's get to it. Okay, so let's talk about the OpenClaw setup because this is absolutely crazy. So starting out, let's talk a little bit about what we were doing. So first off, our OpenClaw is local, it's running on a Mac Mini. And then the idea was we would go and set up Proxmox VE and then give the SSH keys of, the Proxmox VE right on here and just give it to OpenClaw and say like, hey, good luck. Now, running the inference for OpenClaw, one option was just to go and like Claude Opus go and do this. And I was like, no, let's go do this a little bit more excitingly, because instead what we did was we ran a lot of local models. First off, we had the Minimax M2.5 at 8-bit precision running on the Apple Mac Studio M3 Ultra 512 gig. And because we have enough memory there, we're able to go run a giant 196K token context window, which is phenomenal and worked really well for most of what we were doing. We also had a Qwen 3 coder model running on an AMD Ryzen AI Max Plus 395 system that we ran, and then we had GPT OSS 120B that we were running on a DGX Spark. But we were just kind of running something that's relatively easy. Now what happened was completely mind-blowing, guys. So the first task I said, okay, well, what do I need to do to be able to start with this thing? And we tried 2 different things at first, right? So first thing was I installed Ubuntu server, and then I just said, hey, what if I just want to go and turn this into a little Ubuntu system, a little Ubuntu server, and I just want to have like a network share. So I want to run, let's say I want to run ZFS, run a SMB network share, and just like share it to the different devices that are on our network. And guys, that happened within like, I think it was like 30, 35 minutes, and it was just done. And it was just too darn easy. So I was like, all right, let's go another step further and let's go ask it to do Proxmox VE. So we wiped the system again. We went to Proxmox VE and then said, hey, okay, well, let's go do that. And then let's go install something like a Tailscale. And that frankly took a little bit longer, but it happened no problem. So I was like, okay, well, this is still only a quad core processor. So why don't we just let OpenClaw do, I guess, a little bit more with it? So we decided, okay, let's do a Proxmox VE setup. We want it to be, update, have the no subscription repository, all that kind of stuff. Also want it to be fully updated. I want to make sure also that we can get to it. So we'll use maybe Tailscale. Also, we should have some uptime monitoring. So let's do like Uptime Kuma and we'll put that on here as well. Proxmox and Ubuntu, they work no problem as you would kind of expect. But what was, I guess, surprising is that OpenClaw just kind of went at it. It ran into a couple of issues though. The first issue that it ran into was it said that it couldn't authenticate using SSH. So I double checked and I was able to do it. Then I was like, oh yeah, we had a typo, and so now it works. So that was kind of weird. But once this got in, this thing absolutely started cruising. Within a few minutes, I went and checked back and all of a sudden I had the Proxmox VE dashboard. I could see that we were updated to the new version. We have the no subscription repository set up, which was awesome. Also remember that when you do PVE no subscription, you need to disable the enterprise ones, and it did that right. Then I looked and all of a sudden I started seeing things like my 2 hard drives, the 2 28 terabyte Seagate drives that are in here, they were set up with a ZFS array and a mirrored array. So that was working correctly. And then things kind of bogged down. Now, originally OpenClaw told us that it was gonna be 15 to 30 minutes, which it 100% was not. It was probably about 30, 35 minutes there before we really started to see the next set of activities, which were starting LXC containers, which is interesting also in itself because, setting an LXC container meant that it had to know that there was an LXC option, not just like a Docker option, but then it also had to know that there was, VMs, of course, for Proxmox, because that's like the main virtualization thing. And it decided because of the low power CPU that we had in here that it was going to be better to use LXC containers, which is actually quite insightful if you think about it. Now, this went through a number of different iterations. I wouldn't say that this was like a straight everything worked out of the box exactly as if you were a human admin. It definitely went through some trial and error, but a little over an hour into the process, I got a notification on WhatsApp saying, hey, come check. And what I noticed was that there was a stop point where it was like, hey, we need to, for Tailscale, I need you to authenticate. So I had to go through and authenticate, and I did that. And then once that was set up, Tailscale was working. Now, in case you're wondering, as we were going through my son's bedtime routine, this thing ate like $25 worth of tokens, and it didn't really get that far. So I just said, no. We're shutting this whole thing down, and I went and did the process of saying, no, open router, we're only gonna use Minimax M2.5 and the other local models that we have running in the studio. Of course, when I asked OpenClaw to do that, it decided to do whatever the heck it did to its config file, and it totally stopped working. So I had to go and get it working with Minimax M2.5 again. Luckily, we had a backup of the config file, so it wasn't actually that hard to get going. So key lesson learned there, always have a backup of your config file if you're gonna go and ask it to make config changes. Now, once this thing was going though, after a little while, it took a couple of hours, but all of a sudden I got a notification. Everything was working. NPM was up and running. So we had our proxy service where we could go do let's encrypt HTTPS certificates and all that kind of stuff. We had our Uptime Kuma working. We had Tailscale working so we could VPN in and actually get to this thing. And then we had our drive set up in RAID 1 configuration, and we had the ability to go and start doing backups directly to this. And then we had our snapshot set up so that way it would snapshot regularly the backups that were made to this. So guys, whoa, what the heck is going on here? Of course, if you want to see some of the prompts that we use and what have you, we'll have those on the STH main site. With that, I think it's time to get to the hardware. So let's go take a look at this little Beelink. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna notice with this little chassis is just the size of it, right? The overall dimensions of this is something like 6.5 inches, then it's about 4.8 inches, and then 4.5 inches, and I'll let Alex go figure out what that is in millimeters. And frankly, compared to a lot of 2-bay NAS devices, this is a lot smaller, and I really like the fact that they have managed to keep this compact. Also, let's just kind of look at the front of this. This is kind of attractive, right? We have reviewed so many mini PCs that are just like plastic, and they just kind of look like, hey, here's a little shell around the motherboard, right? But this is a little bit different. And also on the front, you get your power button as well as a USB type A port. This is a metal chassis, so on the sides, really don't get that much because one of the things that Beelink is obviously doing is they really have put a little bit more effort into their airflow design on this generation, which is definitely welcome. But where this gets really exciting, of course, is the back because, well, this is what you're presented with. Now, it may not look super exciting, but let me show you where it gets a little bit more exciting, and that's when you pull this, which is magnetically attached. You get this little vent cover here, which maybe filters some dust, I don't know. But on the back here, you're gonna see the 3 different levels of this NAS device because on top we have a drive, then in the middle we have a drive, and then on the bottom we have a motherboard section. Let's just talk about the ports while we're back here. First, you have your DC input. We'll talk more about power consumption in our power consumption section, but that's where you go and put the little wall wart and put that in there. It's actually not too big of a power brick. Next to that, we have 2 wired LAN ports. One of them is a 2.5 gig port. Now this is actually an Intel i226 port, so relatively decent NIC. And then next to that, we also have a Realtek, and this is a 5 gigabit Ethernet port, which means it's the RTL8126. The nice thing is that with both Realtek and Intel, you have the at least a possibility or hope that at least one of them is supported in whatever OS that you use. Next, there's an HDMI port. Now, while the USB type A port on the front is a 10 gigabit USB 3.2 Gen 2 port, the 2 USB ports on the back, those are USB 2, so they're relatively slow ports, but if you just want to hang like a keyboard off of there or something like that, keyboard, mouse, that's exactly what you would use the ones on the rear for. Next to that though, we also get a USB Type-C port. This is a USB 3.2 Gen 2 port that does 10 gigabits per second, and it can also do display output. So in theory, you could actually get 2 displays out of this thing. Next to that, you get a 3.5 millimeter audio jack, so even in this little NAS, you could, I guess, play audio if you wanted to. And between the hard drives and the ports, you're gonna see that there's this area which is really for the heat sinks, and that is really there for, I guess, airflow, right? That's the number one thing because you have to cool the hard drives, you also have to cool the system, and so that's what that's there for. With that, let's get inside the system and show you around. Okay, so get inside the system, use this little tiny Allen wrench, which is kind of stuck in that little rubber bit on the bottom of the system. So I guess I like the idea that you get to keep it with the system, but on the other hand, I think I would rather just use a real screwdriver and not have to deal with that, right? And now that we have that done, let's open this up and you're gonna see a couple things here. So first off, this is the bottom plate and you'll see that we have 3 SSD spots. Now, the 3 of them, one is a PCIe Gen 3 by 2, then there are 2 PCIe Gen 3 by 1 slot. And don't be silly as a salamander and go buy like a super fast, expensive PCIe Gen 5 drive. There's absolutely no reason to do that for a system like this. This is only PCIe Gen 3, and the fastest that you're gonna get is a PCIe Gen 3 by 2, not a by 4. So even a normal like PCIe Gen 3 SSD, you're only gonna run at best at like half speed, or maybe a quarter speed if you're on one of the by ones. Now, the advantage of this, of course, is that you can put more devices in there, and if SSD prices ever go down, you might wanna just go put big SSDs in here just to get more storage. On the other hand, nowadays, what this really is gonna end up being is if you have some old mini PCs that were using M.2s, maybe they're like old Project Tiny Mini Micro nodes from a long time ago, well, that would be a good reason to go and, good place to recycle your SSDs so you don't have to go buy new ones. Okay, so getting to the hard drives is definitely a little different. If you've taken out the screws that also use your little tiny key, you can open this up and you can get to your hard drives. Now, this does not come with hard drives. In fact, what we have here is we have the Seagate Barracuda drives that we have shucked from an external enclosure. We did a whole thing on this not too long ago. And one interesting thing that we found on these 28 terabyte Seagate models is that they say that there are laser devices, which most likely means that they are hammer devices inside. And you might be wondering why we're using these 28 terabyte drives that we shucked out of external enclosures. And the reason for that's really simple, guys. Hard drives are getting crazy expensive too. Okay, so to get into this bottom part, there are 4 of these little screws that you also get to use your little Allen wrench for. I would just say that this sucks. Alex has probably just heard me use some expletives trying to get into this thing. It's not like a hard thing to do at all, but it's just like, this is so tiny and like, just give me a thumb screw. Who has hands that are this size? My son maybe, but he's not even 2 yet. Okay, so once you undo the screws and stuff, you can pop this bottom part out. And this is kind of like one of the neat things I would say about this whole system, right? Is that this is the entire motherboard. So you can see this is where the storage is that we saw on the bottom. On this side, we have our Intel N95 CPU, which has a Intel integrated graphics bit on it as well, which is okay. It's a 4-core, 4-thread E-core processor, so we don't get like super high performance on any of these. Let's make sure that we know that this is a fairly low-end CPU, but for a 2-bay NAS, it's actually quite capable. The other big thing though is that this uses 12 gigabytes of LPDDR5 memory, which means that it's not just a simple SODIMM. So if you want 16 gigs or you want 32 gigs or like whatever, you're not gonna do that in here unless you order something from the, so if you want 16 gigs, you should get the 16 gig version of this. You can upgrade the SSDs, but you can't upgrade the memory. And 12 gigs, by the way, is a decent amount. Like if you're running a NAS, awesome. But on the other hand, if you're gonna go run a desktop, well, you don't actually have that much CPU performance here, so I guess maybe that's fine. But also if you're gonna run a virtualized environment, 12 gigabytes means that you're not running everything under the sun. It means that you're gonna pick and choose what you can run on this. You're gonna get 2 3.5-inch drives. You're gonna get 3 SSDs, most likely 1 boot plus 2 data drives, but none of those are running at like, full even PCIe Gen 3 by 4. So maybe you can get, 5 drives, 1 OS drive, 2 hard drives, 2 data drives, and that's, I guess, okay, but it's definitely not necessarily like a super expandable system, but it's also very small. But that also means that it kind of limits the number of applications that you might one day run on this. Okay guys, so just in terms of performance, let's just make this an easy section for everybody. Here are the Geekbench results. It's not super fast, right? You have quad-core Alder Lake generation E-cores. This is not super fast. Also, there is a pretty big difference between the N95 and the N150. The N150, of course, gets the better graphics solution as well. So you also get better GPU performance as well as a little bump in terms of clock speeds. But from a CPU perspective, it's okay to use, maybe as a desktop, but I would not really want an N95 to be my primary desktop that I used every day. I'd probably go just nuts. Okay, so let's talk about the power consumption and noise, since one of the benefits of getting a lower power CPU is that we get a smaller power brick, but we also get lower power consumption. At idle with no drives, probably about 14-ish, 15 watts. So when we've gotten this to with 3 SSDs and 2 hard drives, is somewhere in that like, maybe 42 to 46 watt range. You're gonna notice that this is not super fast in terms of how long it takes to boot up. And why that matters is exactly what's happening right now. If you have to turn on the system and all of a sudden you're waiting for like a Windows 11 home update, I mean, oh my gosh, guys, like this is This takes some time to boot. Okay, now that we're booted into Windows, I just want you to hear what this sounds like with 2 drives, right? Guys, this is something like 38 dBA or something like that at 1 meter, and in our 34 dBA noise floor studio. Like, frankly, guys, I hear the drives when we do drive access way more than I hear the fans. Like, the fans are just white noise that I just, if you're more than a little bit, like this close, it's not even that annoying. So once it's, across the room or something like that, you're never gonna hear this thing, except for the drives. Drives can be pretty loud, and they usually in a system like this will end up being louder than the actual fans. So always just kind of an interesting little bit when we talk about noise that, how this ships from the factory is gonna be a lot quieter than how a lot of people are gonna use it. As a NAS, we're gonna have that disk access all the time. Okay guys, so let's get to key lessons learned on this thing. Frankly, I really like the fact that it's such a small package. It's pretty attractive. It's not super loud other than the drives or hard drives that you put in it. Pretty portable, pretty low power. Now this is only a quad core Intel N95 processor with like 12 gigabytes of memory, can't expand all this stuff. And so frankly guys, you're not gonna run a giant home lab or any kind of home server or something like that in a system like this because you just have a mediocre CPU. But on the other hand, guys, this was like one of those ones that it got done and I literally sent a text message to Jeff Geerling. If you don't watch his channel, definitely go do that. But I sent a text message to him, I was like, oh my gosh, I just did something that scared me. And the reason for that is pretty simple. No longer do you need to have the skills to go and set up a home lab. Instead, you just have to tell OpenClaw, hey, OpenClaw, go do, give it credentials, of course, and then it does everything for you. And that's one of the craziest things because a lot of people build their home labs in order to be able to, just learn things, right? How do I skill up in the IT industry? Well, I'm gonna go learn how to go do things by having a home server, kind of like something like this. But now you don't have to do that. On the other hand, this is one of the coolest demos you're ever gonna see because if you do wanna have a home server, or let's say you just wanna buy something like this little Beelink mini PC and you wanna install Ubuntu or Proxmox, it's really not that hard. Put it on ISO, click through the UI and you're set nowadays. But like now you can, with absolutely no IT skills other than be able to click through a UI and do an OS installation, you can now have a backup server running ZFS. Just think about that for a second. Like we've had people trying to do ZFS servers for years and thinking that's like a big giant thing, but now it's anybody has an OpenClaw thing can go and set up a little mini PC like this to go be a backup server without much, knowledge of how to actually go do that because OpenClaw just does it all for you. Now, of course, the other side to this is the fact that we did give this root access, which is pretty darn scary. I'm pretty sure that that's how Skynet started. And from a security standpoint, this is horrible. But on the other hand, by the end of it, we had a solution where we had a VPN set up, we had our NPM setup. Like overall, I would say I'm pretty happy with what this did, but it also is a giant security nightmare. I don't want to pretend like it's not. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this system, so definitely let me know in the comments. Also, if you did like this video, why don't you share it with your friends and colleagues, but also give it a like, click subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you can see whenever we come out with great new videos. As always, thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.